Welcome back to the Winning Brief Soundbites. I'm Mabel. In episode 2, we looked at Belgium's new sentencing philosophy and the penalties judges can impose. Today, we focus on companies. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how the new criminal code treats legal entities as defendants, what penalties they face, and you'll practice phrases you can use when advising corporate clients on criminal exposure. Under the old Belgian Criminal Code, punishing a company was complicated. You cannot send a company to prison. No one has figured out how to fit a multinational into a cell. So the law used a conversion mechanism. Judges would take the prison sentence that applied to an individual, run it through a formula, and convert it into a fine for the legal entity. The system was widely criticized as unclear and difficult to apply. The new code scraps that entirely. Companies can now have their own separate penalty tracks set out level by level. For example, a level 3 offense carries a fine of 360,000 to 600,000 euros for a legal entity. At the top end, a level 8 offense carries a maximum fine of 5.76 million euros. But fines are only part of the picture. The new code gives judges a much broader toolkit. They can impose a business activity ban, prohibiting the company from carrying out the activity it misused to commit the offense. They can order probation, requiring the company to meet specific conditions, such as implementing safety measures or training staff. In the most serious cases, a court can order the dissolution of the company altogether. And here is what boards should pay close attention to. Directors and executives can be held personally liable. The individuals behind the company's decisions do not escape simply because the offense was committed in a corporate context. Why does this matter for your practice? First, the separate penalty tracks make advising corporate clients significantly more straightforward. You no longer need to convert individual sentences through a formula. You look up the level, and the penalty range for legal entities is right there. That is a genuine improvement in clarity. And with penalties like business activity bans, probation orders, and even dissolution now on the table, clients need to understand that the risk is no longer just financial. It is operational. Second, a quick note on terminology. If you read Belgian law firm newsletters in English, you will see this penalty translated as a professional ban. Be careful with that. In English, a professional ban sounds like it targets an individual, a doctor struck off, an accountant barred from practice. But when the penalty applies to a company, what is actually being restricted is the company's business activity. So, business activity ban is more precise. This is a good example of why you should always question the English you find in translated legal texts, even when it comes from a reputable source. And third, personal liability for directors changes the conversation in the boardroom. When you advise a company on compliance, you are now also advising individuals on their own exposure. That requires a different tone and often a more direct one. Now let's practice some of the phrases from today's episode. 1. The new code scraps that entirely. Scraps entirely means to discard or abolish something completely. It is more forceful than replaces and signals a clean break from the old system. 2. Fines are only part of the picture. Part of the picture tells your audience there is more to consider. It is an effective way to broaden the scope of a discussion without losing focus. 3. The risk is no longer just financial. It is operational. This contrast structure, no longer just X, it is Y, is powerful in client advice. It reframes the risk in terms the business side understands. 4. Directors and executives can be held personally liable. Held personally liable is essential legal English. It means the individual, not just the company, bears legal responsibility. 5. That requires a different tone and often a more direct one. A good closing line when you want to signal that the legal landscape has changed and the way you communicate must change with it. Time to practice. Repeat after me. The new code scraps that entirely. Fines are only part of the picture. The risk is no longer just financial, it is operational. Directors and executives can be held personally liable. That requires a different tone and often a more direct one. Well done. That wraps up part 1 of this series, the reform itself. In episode 4, we begin part 2, the new offenses. First up, ecocide. Belgium just became one of the first countries in the world to make it a crime. Thank you for learning with the Winning Brief Sound Bites. If your clients face criminal exposure in Belgium, the way your team explains that exposure matters. I help lawyers and legal teams explain complex legal risk in clear, confident English. You can find my work and book a conversation at thewinningbrief.eu.